For the longest time, we all thought the rules of global trade were set in stone, written down in treaties. But right now, those rules are being completely torn up and rewritten. And not with ink and paper, but with sheer industrial power. Okay, let's get into this because what's happening on factory floors is changing the world economy way faster than any negotiation ever could. So here's a real head scratcher, right? The very technologies that are supposed to save the planet, we're talking solar panels, EVs, batteries, they're now the flashpoint for these massive global arguments. How on earth did something so positive become so controversial? To really understand what's going on, we have to start with just one number, 80%. Just let that number hang in the air for a second. What could one country possibly have an 80% lock on? Yep, that's the one. 4 out of every 5 solar panels installed anywhere on the planet come from China. Now, that's not just a big market share, it's a level of dominance that makes you step back and ask, whoa, how did that happen? And more importantly, what does it mean for everyone else? And that brings us to China's industrial machine. Seriously, to get your head around it, you kind of have to stop thinking of China as just a country. It helps to picture it more like a single, giant, super corporation, using all of its national power to pick and choose industries and then nurture them until they basically own the global market. So, what's the secret sauce here? Well, it's a unique system called state capitalism. Think of it like this. It's a hybrid engine. It takes the raw power of the state, mixes it with the long-term vision of a master plan, and then sprinkles in just enough market competition to keep things sharp. The whole thing is designed for one purpose: to win. All right, so how do they actually pull this off? This isn't just happening by accident. Oh no, it is a very deliberate strategy, a playbook that's been perfected over the last couple of decades. Let's break down exactly how it works. It's basically a 5-step recipe for dominance. First, the state just unloads enormous subsidies and super cheap loans into its chosen industries. With all that cash, companies build the best infrastructure and scale up production like you wouldn't believe. And what's the end result? They can make things so cheaply that nobody else can compete, and eventually they just take over the global market. It's a simple formula, but it is brutally effective. And when I say enormous subsidies, what are we actually talking about? Well, take a look at this number. $230 billion. That's the best estimate for how much state support was pumped directly into China's electric car industry in just 14 years. That kind of money doesn't just build a new industry. It forges a global giant that can bend the entire auto industry to its will. Now, as you can imagine, there are 2 very different ways to look at this. China says, hey, this is just smart planning. It's modernization. The US government did the same thing when it funded things like the internet through DARPA. But critics see a totally different picture. They say, no, this is a calculated strategy to warp global competition and make the rest of the world dependent on you. And all of this incredible success, creates a huge new problem for the rest of the world: overcapacity. It's that classic case of when a good thing, in this case making a ton of stuff, becomes way, way too much of a good thing. And we have to be super clear here. This isn't the old school dumping we used to talk about, which was just about selling something for less than it cost to make. This quote nails the new problem perfectly. Overcapacity is about producing on a scale that is just beyond all reason, far more than the entire world actually needs. Let's put some real numbers on this. Check out the EV market. Every year, China can churn out about 15 million electric cars, but its own market, even though it's huge, can only absorb about 8 million. So, where do those other 7 million cars go every year? They flood global markets. This tsunami of products crashes prices everywhere, and it makes it almost impossible for companies in other countries to stay afloat. And here's the kicker. Our whole system of global trade rules, the WTO and all that, it just wasn't built to handle a problem of this scale. It's completely obsolete. Okay, so if the old playbook is useless, what's next? We can't just throw up our hands. We have to start thinking differently, and that means redefining what fair trade even means in the 21st century. Think about it. Back in the day, trade fights were about stuff you could see, like tariffs at the border or quotas on products. Pretty straightforward. Today's challenges, they're way more complex. We're dealing with colossal state subsidies, systemic overcapacity, and the incredible power that comes from controlling data and operating at a massive scale. It's a totally different ballgame. This really gets to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? It's the big question that policymakers all over the world are losing sleep over. What does fair even look like when the biggest technological leaps aren't coming from scrappy startups in a garage, but from the immense power of state capitalism? So this brings us to what a potential solution could look like. It's this idea of a new charter for the future. And the goal isn't to turn back the clock, but to build a new system that's fair by design for the reality we're in right now.
Here's a possible blueprint, and it's built on a few key ideas. First, total transparency. No more hidden subsidies. Everyone needs to know the real cost of things. Second, what are called sunset clauses, which means subsidies have an expiration date. They can't go on forever. Then you'd need an early warning system to spot overcapacity before it becomes a crisis, and genuine two-way street reciprocity on market access. And finally, a clause to make sure developing countries can actually build things, not just be the last step in an assembly line.
And let's be really clear about this. The point isn't to kill industrial policy. Heck, every major country does it in some form. The real goal is to write a new set of rules for the road so that this intense competition doesn't just spiral into a free-for-all subsidy war that destabilizes the whole world. And really, it all boils down to this powerful idea. That old dream of a perfectly free market, that ship has probably sailed. The new goal is fair markets, a system that's actively designed to balance power, to encourage shared innovation, and to make sure no one country can rig the game.
So I'll leave you with this one last thought to chew on. For almost all of history, our biggest economic problem was scarcity, not having enough of something. But maybe, just maybe, our biggest challenge today is the complete opposite, is the great test of our time learning how to manage a world of incredible and sometimes dangerous abundance.